This is Eliana James. I'm the Director of Accessibility Training at Be Accessible, Inc. We are an Los Angeles, California-based organization that trains and helps other businesses be ADA compliant. These are outtake slides from a recent training that we did for a small university in Southern California. They needed all of their administrators to understand what asking for reasonable accommodation was, and we talked about disabilities. We talked about how they're very much more common than most people think. Fully 20% of the population has a disability that is covered by the ADA. We introduced them to some possible students who have conditions like ADHD, a traumatic brain injury, PTSD, and later on in the session we walk them through what that might mean for asking for an accommodation. Students with disabilities are protected by law. We covered federal law, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and different state laws, and told them what was contained in there. We talked about the Fair Employment and Housing Act. It is the California civil rights law from way back in 1959 that is actually the progenitor of the Americans with Disabilities Act and all the other laws. We talked about the Disabled Persons Act, another California law that's related to construction violations. We talked about how they might have to comply with these laws. On the construction issues, we talked about things we all know about, like curb cuts and bathroom facilities, parking spaces, and even the signage including Braille that is next to elevators in many cases. Then we do little quizzes, and that's built into our training. So we have quiz questions, and we make the training as interactive as possible. This answer is the Americans with Disabilities Act, for example. Then we move on to phrases like interactive process. And that's a process that talks about going back and forth while you are getting a reasonable accommodation, conversations that take place. We do another little quiz time question. What does an interactive process not include in this case? It includes the student's refusal to engage in the conversation, because interactive means back and forth. We talk about documentation, and I stress documentation, documentation, documentation. Dates and times that things happened, who was involved, and what happened. Absolutely essential to protect yourself. Most disabilities are hidden, but people are still entitled to accommodations when they bring them up. And in the next session, which is part 2, we discuss the students. We discuss what they might be asking and how they might be asking for it, and how the administrators should react. So again, we cover how we know someone has a disability. Clearly not everybody has a cane, not everybody needs handicap parking, but basically we are waiting for them to take the lead. We talk a little bit deeper about hidden disabilities, and that many mental or psychiatric conditions are hidden from a casual observer, and even many physical conditions are hidden. We talk about the self-identifying process where the student asks for an accommodation and an accommodation is put in place, and then there is follow-up by the administration to make sure it works. We do a little quiz question. And this one, the answer is not unless they want an accommodation. The student is not obliged to self-identify. We talk about acceptable ways to ask for accommodations, and I break down the 5 steps in plain English. They don't have to mention the ADA, etc., etc. Then we bring back the students, the 5 students that we're concentrating on. And in each case, I do a little scenario with the students where they ask for accommodations at different points from before they register all the way through they've taken a test and it's not going well. In this case, Kaylin, who has a hearing loss, which is not obvious because she does speak in clear language because she did not lose her hearing till later on, and she is not obviously deaf. We talk about what accommodations might work for her. She does not ask in my scenarios for American Sign Language, but that is definitely something that she is entitled to. Then we talk about how did she do? And I stop the teaching and we have a conversation, whether it's on a webinar chat or in person, face-to-face, depending on how I do the training. And we discuss what they think. Then we bring them all back again. We talk about the 5 of them and how did they do? And they rate which teachers or counselors did the best, which students did the best asking for accommodations. We do a summary, in this case self-identification, the 5 different disabilities, accommodations, limitations, and how did everybody do. That's it for the moment. Thank you. If you want similar training, please contact us at eliana@beaccessible.com or sales@beaccessible.com, and let us help you like we helped the university